Hey y'all, welcome to a new What's for Dinner. So, we started off our week with some pure comfort food, and that is meatloaf. This is a really common dish here in Kentucky, and it's something that both Josh and I really enjoy. It's been a hot minute since I've made one, so it was definitely time. This is surprisingly something that both of my kids really like as well, which is kind of shocking. I know as a kid myself, I thought that meatloaf looked and sounded disgusting, but here we are. Now it's one of my favorite dishes. So I have a meatloaf recipe that is tried and true. It's my go-to, but on this day in particular, I was in the mood to see what else is out there and try something different. So this recipe is coming in from Natasha's Kitchen. I'll be sure to have her recipe in my description box so you can get the exact measurements, print the recipe, whatever you want to. But for the meatloaf itself, you'll need 2 pounds of ground beef, at least 85% lean. I normally don't buy the organic grass-fed, but it was just a few cents higher than the normal stuff, so I figured why not. I also have 2 eggs, some milk, some fresh parsley, which is honestly something I don't have that much experience with, and I probably should. Some ketchup, minced garlic, some panko breadcrumbs, and then for the seasonings, you'll need some paprika, Italian seasoning. She used a real onion, but I don't do that, so I have onion powder, and of course salt and pepper. So I'm just going to get all of this mixed into my mixing bowl. Now that everything is combined, I can go ahead and stuff it into my loaf pan. I have been wanting a meatloaf pan for the longest time, like the kind that comes in 2 pieces and you can like actually lift it out of the grease, but I always forget. I did try to find one at Walmart when I was shopping for the ingredients to make this meatloaf, and they didn't have any. I know that you can find them on Amazon, but by the time I thought of it, I couldn't have got it in time, so maybe I'll actually crack down and make that purchase today for next time. But she did say to line the pan with parchment paper to make it easy to lift out. And that did work well, but it was kind of a pain to work with, as you could probably tell, and kind of stressful. But I ended up just shoving it down in there and patting it down, and all was well. Also, one tip for meatloaf is when you are mixing it, you definitely don't want to stand there and mix it for too long. That will result in a tough meatloaf, and nobody wants that. It just completely changes the texture. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, so I have my oven preheated to 375 degrees, and I am going to pop that in for 40 minutes. While that was in the oven, I went ahead and prepared the glaze that's going to get poured over the top, which, in my opinion, is the absolute best part to a meatloaf. Like, if it doesn't have the glaze, I don't want it. But all that's going to consist of is about 3/4 a cup of ketchup, 1.5 teaspoons of vinegar, just the regular white distilled vinegar, a few tablespoons of brown sugar, which I think is a must in any meatloaf glaze. And for the seasonings, it's just a combination of some onion and garlic powder, a little bit of salt, and a whole lot of pepper. And I'm just going to give that a quick mix. Always be sure to break up the brown sugar because it does tend to clump up sometimes. And here is the meatloaf after I pulled it from the oven after that 40 minutes. I topped it with the glaze, and I'm just taking the back of my spoon and spreading that all over the surface, and I'm just going to pop that in for a final 20 minutes. I will say I think that you should cook it for an additional 10 to 15 minutes because there was just the smallest little section that was slightly undercooked, and stuff like that just irritates me, so I just wanted to be sure to throw that in there. But anyways, it took me a minute to figure out how I was going to get this meatloaf onto the serving tray, so here's what I came up with. I just placed my parchment paper onto a double bagged grocery sack, and then I took 2 spatulas, one on each end, and I just carefully removed it to the serving tray. It lifted with ease, didn't fall apart at all, so no problems there, which was really nice. I really liked how all of that grease like remained down in the parchment paper, and I could just knot it up and toss that out with no mess. As always with meatloaf, you want to let it rest for at least 10 minutes before slicing. That way everything stays together and looks nice. I paired this with some asparagus and some baked potatoes. Not really the traditional size that we normally do, but that's the fun in home cooking. You can do whatever you want to. So our final thoughts on the meatloaf recipe. It was very, very, very good. Not a drop of it went to waste, but I have to say, I think that we liked my go-to recipe just a teeny, tiny tad bit more. It was really hard to decide, but I will have that recipe linked in my description box as well, so you can decide for yourself which one you want to go with. The next day we had some leftovers, so we turned them into sandwiches. This is our favorite way to use up leftover meatloaf. So I just toasted up a couple pieces of bread. Sometimes I leave it untoasted. Just depends on what I'm feeling that day. And then I add some mayo and cheese, and it is absolutely delicious if you've never tried it. And we decided to go with some grippos for the side, another staple around here. And I also made some pasta salad, which is really up there on my list of favorite summertime dishes. So let me show you how I made it. So I just cooked up and drained a little over a half a box of spaghetti noodles. This was my first time serving it with these noodles. I normally do like rotini or bow tie, but of course you can use any pasta for this. But I love when I go to a cookout and someone brings it like this. They call it spaghetti salad, and I just think it's so fun and kind of different, so I wanted to give it a try, and I would definitely do it again. And at this point you can add in any veggies that you want to. I kept it simple with cucumbers and tomatoes, and I'm just tossing in some mini pepperonis. This is also really good with salami, turkey, ham, really any type of meat, or just no meat at all. It's really good with just the veggies. Now I'm just going to add in some Parmesan cheese, and y'all, I looked everywhere for some Salad Supreme seasoning. I've never tried it before, but a lot of you guys told me it's super good in pasta salad, and I wanted to try it so bad, but everywhere is sold out. So I just did some Slap Ya Mama. And then I'm going to be adding in some of this Olive Garden Italian dressing. Any Italian dressing will work. It doesn't have to be the Olive Garden. I definitely went a little heavy on that. You do have to remember that as it sits in the fridge, the pasta is going to soak up the dressing. And I don't like mine dry. I understand that, some people do, but mine was definitely not dry. I will put it that way. So yeah, I just tossed that around with my tongs. That seemed to be the easiest way. And I just gave it a final touch of black pepper. I feel like I have to have that in literally everything. But yeah, that's literally it. This is so extremely easy. And it's one of those dishes that stretches a long ways because you don't need a lot. It's really like tangy and has a powerful taste from that Italian dressing. But this meal came together super quick, and I love nights like that. And I want to know down in the comments if any of you guys do meatloaf sandwiches with your leftovers. Up next, I did another super simple dinner, and part of that was these buffalo chicken wraps. So for the chicken, I just used these air fried chicken strips from Tyson. This was my first time purchasing these, and I wanted to see what it was all about. And I'm going to be coating those in this Buffalo Wild Wings spicy garlic buffalo sauce. Of course, I'm not going to be adding that to the kids. I'm going to wash and chop some of that lettuce, shred that block of cheese, and that's my go-to ranch, the Boathouse Farms. And we have been loving these tortillas lately, and we like them over the Carb Balance ones by Mission, and these are a little bit cheaper. So I just tossed that chicken into my air fryer. I just went by the directions on the back of the bag. Here they are afterwards. I'm just generously coating those and just giving it a good shake. If you didn't like spicy, this would be super good with barbecue as well. And really, the options are endless. Or, of course, you can just leave it plain like my kids did. So I started by heating up my tortilla in the microwave. I followed that with a big piece of lettuce on the bottom. I did 2 buffalo strips per wrap, followed by a good amount of that shredded cheese. And you can't forget the ranch drizzle that ties everything together and cools it down a little bit. Then you're just going to fold it up, and I like to stick a toothpick in it just to keep everything together. And just look at how good that looks, and it was super low effort, and you wouldn't even know it. For a side, I decided to make some homemade potato wedges. So I just took a few good russet potatoes and washed them well, cut them into wedges as you can see, and I always like to do an ice bath soak for at least 30 minutes when it comes to these. It really helps to remove the starch, and it just gives it a much better texture. I skipped this step one time before, and they just weren't near as good, so definitely don't skip that. You will want to dry these the best that you can. I just pat them with some paper towels. I also like to just wipe out that same bowl that I soaked the potatoes in to keep from dirtying up another dish. Just, keep it all in one bowl. And I drizzle those with some olive oil, and obviously use whatever seasonings you want to. I do something different every time that I make these pretty much. So on this day, I started with some Lawry's garlic salt. I did onion powder and some paprika. I really love the color that paprika gives. It just gives that really nice seasoned look. And then lastly, just some black pepper. So I'm just going to toss that together really well to make sure that every little inch of those potatoes are completely covered in seasonings. I cannot stand bland any type of potatoes. So I just dumped that out onto a parchment lined cookie sheet, and I did take the time to make sure that everything's in a single layer. That way it will cook evenly. And I just popped that in my oven at 450 degrees for about 30 minutes. And these come out perfect every single time that I make them. It's always crispy on the outside and nice and soft and fluffy on the inside. So good. These buffalo chicken wraps were a huge hit. These would also be really good for lunchtime just because of how easy and quick they are to throw together. And as for the Tyson chicken strips, I would definitely buy these again. The kids really love them, so it's just nice when you want something quick like this. And as you can see, I also did a side of cucumbers, and I like to sprinkle some lemon pepper seasoning on those. I have been craving some chicken tacos, so let's make some in the Instant Pot. So I'm going to be adding 2 boneless, skinless chicken breasts to the bottom of my pot. This was about 1.5 pounds, and then you'll need a package of taco seasoning. So this is my first time buying the Kinder's Taco Blend. I found it at Walmart, and we loved it, and we're kind of picky when it comes to taco seasoning, so I'll definitely be repurchasing that. And then you'll also need about 1.5 cups of some salsa. This is my favorite one. It's the Great Value Cantina style, medium heat level. If you are new here, I cannot do onions. It's more of like a texture thing, so I do like to blend mine up, so that's why it looks more like tomato sauce. But lastly, you'll just need 1/2 cup of water, and that's literally it. Very few ingredients. Love that. And I'm just gonna let that cook on manual for 7 minutes with a 5-minute natural release. So I just shredded that up with 2 forks, and this is what it should look like. So very good, and there is so much that you can do with this. It's a great recipe to have on hand. You can do salads, nachos, quesadillas. The list goes on and on. So to go along with that, I made some Mexican street corn for the first time. We recently went to Las Vegas, and this was my most favorite thing that I had down there, and I have not been able to get it off my mind since. And also my friend Tamara from Southern Wife Everyday Life was making some on her channel, so I knew that I had to make some ASAP. I couldn't take it no more, and it was hands down my favorite thing from this whole entire video, so that's saying something. I will have a recipe link, but I didn't measure anything here. I just did equal parts mayo and sour cream. I added in some chili powder and paprika and some lime zest, and I just mixed that together and spread that all over some cooked corn on the cob. I know this may look weird if you've never had this before, but you got to try it at least once. Don't knock it until you try it. It is seriously amazing. So much flavor, and even Josh, who is picky about stuff like this, really enjoyed it. I wasn't really sure how to pronounce that cheese. If I had a guess, maybe cotija. I don't know, but you just sprinkle that on top, and I also squeezed some lime juice over top. My grocery store was out of cilantro, so I just did some dried parsley, and it was perfection. Honestly, a 12 out of 10. So good. I also made some homemade Mexican rice. I will leave that recipe in my description box. I do have a whole video on it, but it's older. I haven't watched it in a while, and it's honestly probably kind of cringy, but and as you can see, I just did some hard shell tacos with that chicken mixture. I just topped it with some cheese and some of that leftover sauce mixture from the corn, and then some taco sauce on the side. We ended the week at a music festival. We camped there for 2 nights, so I did include some of the food clips from while we were there. So the first night I went to a hibachi food truck, and I will never turn down a funnel cake. It's one of my favorite things. And then the next night we did these like cheese, bacon, and ranch potato ribbons. Super good. And then one of our friends grilled out some potatoes and sausage and hoe cakes. So that is going to wrap up this video. Thank you so much for watching, and if you haven't done so already, make sure you're subscribed to my channel so that you don't miss out on future content. Bye guys.